welcome back in. Welcome back in. Today we're going to be discussing some of our favorite league-winning running backs and wide receivers. With a lot of drafts happening this weekend, we figured this would be a good time to kind of update this list a little bit. We did this about a month and a half ago, but figured this is a good time as ever to kind of come out with a new list. So that being said, let's start off with the running back position. Now we can easily talk about guys like Tony Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson, maybe a Jahmyr Gibbs type running back here in this range, Joe Mixon type of players. But we decided to dig a little bit deeper and talk about some other options here. So, Cody, why don't you kick it off with your first guy?
Yeah, man, I got to kick it off with a Penn Stater first, right? It just wouldn't be a TFA show if I didn't mention Penn Stater and someone who we have both been pretty high on throughout the entire offseason. Now he's kind of going like in a little bit of that range of the names you were just mentioning, but I feel like he's not getting the attention and the respect that he deserves. That is Miles Sanders, who's currently going as RB19 at like that 4 or 5 turn, according to the Fantasy Pros consensus ADP. And the fact that I like him is simple, right? He's set up to be the workhorse back in this offense. He's running behind an offensive line that last year ranked 9th in adjusted line yards. Now, we obviously shouldn't be expecting double-digit touchdowns again from him. But even if that falls back a little bit, I think he can make up for some of that loss of the touchdowns by being way more involved in the passing offense than he has been the past couple of years in Philly. We don't have to go back that far either, just through his rookie year, where he did see 50 catches as a rookie. And he obviously has some familiarity with his coaching staff as well. He was paid to be a workhorse running back, and there's no one else in this offense, in the backfield anyway, that really scares me, to be quite honest. And even in the receiving room, I don't think there's anyone in there that Bryce Young is just going to have to pepper with targets that's going to command all of his attention. So I think because of that, he is going to be involved heavily in the passing game as well. So Sanders is a guy, like I said, kind of going as that back end RB2. I think we can definitely see him finish on that fringe RB1, RB2 range.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with another player that is going similar in range. There's a lot of players that I actually wanted to talk about here. There's Damian Pierce. I wanted to start off by talking about him. RB 18th, 48th overall. I still don't understand why his ADP doesn't rise at all, but this is a player last year that averaged over 20 touches per game last year, had over almost 1,000 rushing yards, 165 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns, averaged about 13 fantasy points per game. And this was one of the worst offenses in the league. We've talked all offseason about this guy. I feel like I talked about him at nauseum. But this offensive line is going to be better this year with adding Shaq Mason and drafting Scruggs in the second round. They've added a lot of depth as well at this position. And this preseason, we have seen Damian Pierce. He is operating as the feature back. This past week, the preseason game, he played on 23 of the 26 possible snaps for this offense. So he is going to be the dude. And this is how they've handled him in every single preseason game. It's not like they're saving Devin Singletary for anything. So I think Damian Pierce is going to be the true workhorse back in this offense. He is a far better running back, superior running back than what Devin Singletary is anyways. I think Damian Pierce, I've already moved him up to my RB10, what some people could say is hot, but I just think that's kind of where he should be going. He should be viewed as kind of an RB1. He's not, because he's on the Texans. A lot of people don't like this, but it's also one of the best divisions that you could be possibly playing in. This division is going to be really, really bad outside of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that being said, I just love Damian Pierce, and I think the sky is the limit for him this year.
Yeah, I'm not quite at RB10 like you are, but you've definitely talked me into moving him up my ranks, and I think he makes a ton of sense. And especially like you said, he's someone whose ADP isn't rising at all. Speaking of ADP that isn't rising, I'm going to go back to someone that Miles Sanders used to play with in Philly. We're going to talk about Kenneth Gainwell, and depending on your league size, your settings, Gainwell is going undrafted in some circumstances. When you have DeAndre Swift going as RB29, it kind of seems like he's locked into kind of just like a pass catching role. So it seems at this point of the season anyway. Then you have Rashad Penny, who's going as RB41, talking about a dude who has never played a full season in his career. He always seems to get banged up. I'm not going to try and predict that he has like a season-ending injury by any means, but we shouldn't be, if he does miss a handful of games, we shouldn't be shocked if he does miss some. I think Gainwell can fill the roles of what both of those running backs do well. He's been getting the most consistent buzz throughout camp. It kind of seems like he's been the most consistent guy as well. He's been used in all phases of the game. And the fact that you can get him at RB52 is just an absolutely fantastic price. Again, he can definitely be in that back end RB2 range, I think. It shouldn't shock anyone if he has like a Miles Sanders-esque type season this year. Obviously, again, can't predict the touchdowns. But then we also have to remember that under Nick Sirianni, just 2 seasons ago in Gainwell's rookie season, he did see 50 targets, which does give us some hope for a receiving type ceiling with Kenneth Gable.
Yeah, I think he's one of the later round running backs that I like to take a shot on. I mean, he's not going to cost you anything, and so I think he's an easy player to invest in. Next up for me, I kind of went back and forth here on who I want to talk about, but I think two of the guys I've talked so much about, much like Damian Pierce, but Alexander Madison, I still think that he is something that we definitely should be targeting. RB21, 64th overall. We just had more reports come out today that pretty much confirmed he is 100% the lead back. He's been utilized a ton in the passing game and training camp, and that's something they've been really trying to work them on as well. So he is definitely going to be somebody that I don't understand why he's not going higher than what he is. And then there's other ones. Javonte Williams is somebody that I have been way ahead of market on everybody. I have him as my RB13, my rankings. RB27, 70th overall. His ADP still hasn't changed, despite the fact that he has been way ahead of schedule this entire time. I think people are going to look back on Javonte Williams this year and really be kicking themselves for not drafting him. Everybody else that has got this incredible discount on him, bravo. I am happy for you, and I think that he is somebody that can definitely finish as a top 10 running back this year. But the player that I really wanted to get to is James Cook, and he's somebody that I haven't really talked a lot about this offseason. But he is RB29 or 74th overall. Season, he had 31.2% of the opportunities. He had 525 rushing yards, 180 receiving yards, and then 3 touchdowns, only 6.3 fantasy points per game. But if you peel back the curtain a little bit, and he was first in explosive run rate last year, 21st in yards created per touch, 26th in yards after contact per attempt, and 14th in yards per out run. James Cook was really good this year. And honestly, if you look at James Cook and how he's going to be utilized in this Bills offense, like it looks like he is going to be the dude. Still have Damian Pierce, Latavius Murray, but in preseason, once again, James Cook has been operating like the lead back in this offense. He played every single snap this last week, except for on the one drive that he played, except for the last one where Damian Pierce got it for the touchdown. Now, that is going to be something that is going to be probably a little bit frustrating because there are going to be times where he loses goal line work, something like that. But overall, James Cook is in a tremendous spot. He's being drafted later in the draft. And I think if you can kind of get him as your RB3, he has serious RB2 upside. Like, I think it wouldn't shock me if he finishes like a high-end RB2. He is on a little bit on the smaller side. He's 5'11", 199, but he has the frame where he can fill that out and actually put on some weight and it really not bother him at all. But super explosive running back, great offense here with Buffalo Bills. And so I just think James Cook is in a great. And then I just want to mention just really quickly, I think the running backs you should be looking as like later round guys that had that potential to be that league winning later in the season. Jalen Warren, Roshan Johnson, Tank Bigsby, Tyjae Spears, and Chase Brown are all running backs that I would be looking to invest in later in your drafts, whatever you're drafting as those late round handcuffs, late round flyers. Let's go ahead and jump over to the wide receiver position so we can keep this thing moving. Cody, hit us with your first wide receiver you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to kick things off with a rookie here. Now, obviously, I'm a fan of Jordan Addison this year as far as rookie wide receivers go for redraft leagues. But Zay Flowers is going 20 picks after him in current ADP as wide receiver 46 off the board compared to 37 for Addison. I know some people worry about the fact that the Ravens offense, hasn't really had this many competent wide receivers at the same time since Lamar Jackson has been there. But first of all, that's a really low bar to clear, right? Like that wide receiver room has been, more or less dreadful during Lamar Jackson's tenure. But I'm also not all that concerned by the guys who are there. Like I think OBJ is washed. If you look at his numbers, anything efficiency wise, anything with explosive numbers, that sort of thing, that has all been on a downward trend for really the past several years, which sucks because, he looked like he was going to be, an absolutely dominant wide receiver his first few years. And then Rashad Bateman. I mean, that was a guy that both of us really liked coming out of college, but he just hasn't been able to put it together. Injuries or whatever else, we haven't really seen it from him. And the thing that I really like about Zay Flowers is the fact that he can win inside and outside. So, if one of those guys were to miss time, he could easily bounce to the outside. But if he's going to be the majority as a inside slot receiver, that fits perfectly with what Lamar Jackson does best. He's best as a passer, targeting the middle of the field. He tends to struggle a little bit more on the outside. So if they're going to be putting Zay Flowers in these positions where he can just rack up yards after catch, he's really dynamic with the ball in his hands. And if you have somebody like Mark Andrews who could potentially clear out the middle of the field and be gaining a bunch of attention from defenses, that's just going to benefit him all the more. So I think, with where Zay Flowers is going right now, I think he could absolutely smash his ADP. And it shouldn't surprise anyone if he finishes as like a back end wide receiver too. Like I said, right now he's going as wide receiver 46, and I think his ADP is like around 115. So he would absolutely smash that and be a league winner for you.
Yeah, I'm right there on board with you. I love Zay Flowers. I think he is one of the best later round picks. For me, it's going to be a second year wide receiver that I'm going to start off with, and that's Chris Olave, wide receiver 12, 37th overall. While his ADP is still pretty high, I mean, he's still not really talked about among guys like Garrett Wilson or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think he absolutely should be. Chris Olave was fantastic last year in his rookie season with 26% target share. He handled 40.8% market share of air yards, which was first among all wide receivers last year. And he played in only 15 games, but he still had 72 catches for 1,042 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns, 13.2 fantasy points per game. We know wide receivers typically take the biggest step in year 2 now of their career. And yes, Michael Thomas is there and he's healthy for now, but Michael Thomas hasn't played a full season in forever. And so, I mean, I think Chris Olave, there's a lot to like with this ceiling. He was 10th in yards per out run, 9th in yards per team pass attempt, and 12th in route win rate last year. He was a baller in this offense, and now they have Derek Carr, which I don't think is much of an upgrade or downgrade from what they had last year. And so I just think Chris Olave is going to be the alpha in this offense. While there is other pass catchers here, I think Chris Olave is going to earn himself enough target share. I think anywhere from 130, 135 targets is in the range of possibilities for Chris Olave. As good as he is as a down the field receiver, I think that only benefits him even more. And I think he's going to become a little bit more refined in his underneath short yardage stuff. But he still was already a really good route runner last year. It's something we knew about him. So Chris Olave, while he's not in the most sexy offense, he is playing in one of the worst divisions in the league. Whenever you're going to get to play the Falcons twice, the Bucks twice, the Panthers twice, I think Chris Olave is going to be somebody that eats this year and easily finishes a top 12 wide receiver. So,
Yeah, before I jump into my last guy, just 2 early guys that kind of go along with Chris Olave I want to throw out there as potential league winners. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know he's going as wide receiver 10, but I think there's a real chance he finishes as a top 3 wide receiver. I think there's a chance he could lead the league in receptions this year. And then Calvin Ridley is another guy who's going early. And I feel like he definitely has like that top 3, top 5 upside as well. And I know you said we were going to do running back and wide receivers, but I got to get my guy in, man. I have to talk about a tight end, and I'm going to wrap this up for my picks anyway with Sam LaPorta, the rookie tight end coming for the Detroit Lions. If I don't get someone like Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson early, I'm just going to completely punt the position, and I'm going to take Sam LaPorta, who is currently going with an ADP of 172 overall, and I'm just going to stack up my roster everywhere else. We're talking about a guy who has an 86th percentile speed score, 76th percentile burst score, 90th percentile agility score, and a 79th percentile college dominator rating. We're also looking at one of the better offenses in the league that is starving for pass catchers behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I was just talking about. I know, rookie tight ends normally take a little while to develop. You always hear if they have to learn, they're learning 2 positions, right? They're learning the offensive line and they're learning how to be a receiver in the NFL. All the reports that we've gotten out of Lions camp is that he has earned the tight end 1 spot since the beginning of the camp as a rookie. Coming out of Iowa, we know that he's at least going to be a competent blocker, if not a very good blocker. And then, like I said, he already has some of that production to go to his name with that 79th percentile college dominator rating. They've been featuring him in this offense as well. There was a report that came out of camp that, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, LaPorta was next in line for targets and receptions, like I said, featuring him in the end zone. So I think that there is a very good chance, if you missed our hot take episode, I said Sam LaPorta finishes as a top 5 tight end. I know we're supposed to talk about running backs and wide receivers, but had to get my guy in. Sam LaPorta could absolutely win you a league.
Lastly, I just want to hit on Christian Watson, wide receiver 23, 54th overall. In 14 games last year, he did have a 15% target share, but he had a 25.5% target per out run rate, which is very, very good. And he had 41 catches, 611 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns, good for 11.7 fantasy points per game. Now, he was obviously really good. He was 12th in yards per route run, 15th in yards per team pass attempt. He was also with a 123.3 QBR when targeted, which was second most among all wide receivers last year. And his 3.45 fantasy points per touch was also first among all wide receivers last year. Obviously, scoring the 9 touchdowns in the short sample size obviously pays that off. But you have to remember Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, it's 140 plus targets that are vacated from this offense. Obviously, they drafted Jaden Reed, who's probably one of my favorite late round wide receivers, who's going to play the slot here for this offense. But I think there is a huge ceiling here for Christian Watson in this offense. Obviously, we have the question marks of Jordan Love and how is he going to produce. But I will say, I think Jordan Love has actually played pretty well so far in this preseason, and Christian Watson looks to be the guy in this offense. So at wide receiver 23, 54th overall, I think that is fair value for him, and I think the ceiling is really, really high for him. Especially even if Jordan Love is only in that like top 15 to 20 quarterback range, I think that is more than enough to be able to support Christian Watson for a full season. And so, while yes, Romeo Dobbs and some of the other guys are there, like Luke Musgrave and obviously Jaden Reed, I think Christian Watson is probably the most entrenched player here in this offense. Second year that's taking that second year leap in this offense, uber explosive athlete. And so I just think Christian Watson is the sky's the limit for him. Yes, there is some downside here with him, but I do think Christian Watson does make a ton of sense at where he is coming off the board, especially with some of the wide receivers that are going off around him. So, and then lastly, I kind of went back and forth. I want to talk Jahan Dotson, which I will add with Jahan Dotson is that his situation is very similar to Christian Watson, but for some reason there's this massive gap between the two of them where Jahan Dotson's wide receiver 36, 88th overall. When you look at the numbers, they're very similar last year. 35 catches, 523 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns for him in a short sample size, who dealt with some injuries last year. With a 17.5% target share. We both have question marks with these two offenses. We have question mark with the quarterback with Sam Howell here. And now you have Terry McLaurin dealing with an injury that could likely bother him for a lot of the year. Obviously, that's the caveat there is he has Terry McLaurin where Christian Watson's the number one. But overall, Jahan Dotson, I think, is massively undervalued, massively underrated, and should be going much higher than what he is. I think Jahan Dotson is a baller and Penn State great that we always have to throw in there for all the Nittany Lions that are out there. But I just wanted to mention him. And lastly, I think guys like Marvin Mims, who is now entrenched the wide receiver 3, but could also move higher now with Jerry Jeudy, who's set to miss some time here. Justin Ross is a guy that I've talked a little bit about that I think that has really shined in Chiefs camp and in preseason. That being said, I appreciate everybody checking it out. Week 1 is next week. We will start dropping some week 1 content probably this week. You can be looking for. We're going to be doing some early waiver looks, and then we're going to week 1 rankings, boys and girls, because week 1 is next week. It's a week from Thursday, so we're excited. Finally, fantasy football is back. We've made it through the preseason's over. So that being said, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Don't miss out on any future content we're going to have. Be sure to jump over to our absolutely free Discord, link in the comment section below. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.